Justin just asked Andrew, asked me, and I would have brought down the blue one anyway,
We provide you
I just ran to go get
I would not send them a book of issues and background. I would wait until an issue arises that they specifically ask for it, then provide them the context for that issue. That's your discretion.
The idea that it's hard work talking to people.
I'll check some more.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
let's get rolling.
let's go.
Okay, your attention, please. We're getting ready to start this part of the meeting, please. Quorum? Good. Yes, that's what I'm
Just name
checking on.
somebody else.
Yeah, we're good. You're here, Mr. Wilson's here, and I'm here, and Mr. Stedman's here. Okay, welcome to the Committee of the Coordinating Board on Academic and Workforce Success. Please be advised that this meeting is being broadcast over the internet. Agenda item number 2 is consideration of approval of the minutes from the September 27th, 2018 committee meeting. Are there any questions or discussions on the minutes of that meeting?
Move for approval?
I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second? Okay, a motion by Ms. Acosta, second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item 3, which is consideration of approval of the consent calendar. Items listed on the consent are items 5H, K 1 through 2, L 1 through 8, M, N, O, and P 1 through 3. Are there any questions or discussion? If there's no discussion, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second?
Okay, motion by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Costa. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. We move on to agenda item number 4, which is public testimony on agenda items relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. We do not have any registered to testify, so we will go on to the next item, which is agenda item number 5, which involves matters relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. Item 5A is a report to the Committee on activities of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. There's no action required, but we do have guests. Dr. Justin Lauder, who is chair of this committee, will provide a brief update on the activities. Welcome, Dr. Lauder.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak to you today about the activities of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. LTAC engages in substantive policy research and discussion regarding the role that learning technology plays in Texas higher education. LTAC also reviews institutional proposals for doctoral programs offered via distance education, and LTAC informs the coordinating board of how distance ed and computer-assisted instruction, including e-learning tools such as electronic textbooks and open education resources, can help the state reach the goals of 60 by 30 techs. The committee met approximately 5 times over the last academic year here in Austin to discuss distance, online, and technology-supported education. We approved 6 new distance or hybrid doctoral programs, 2 programs from University of Texas of Arlington, 1 from UT Health Science Center San Antonio, 1 from West Texas A&M, 1 from UT Health Science Center Houston, and 1 from Sam Houston State. The committee also took a look at what's known as the Principles of Good Practice for Online Learning. This document asks institutions to review and certify that their online programs meet certain criteria. The criteria discussed as part of the PGP include things like curriculum and instruction, faculty support, institutional commitment, student support, evaluation and assessment of the online programs, student learning outcomes as they compare to other programs, and the overall learning environment students are involved in. PGP was last updated in 2010, so the committee decided it was time to do an update on the language and wording dealing with distance education and online education in Texas. LTAC hopes to have this version finalized and to this committee for your review and approval sometime this year. We are now asking colleges and universities throughout the state to give us their thoughts and comments. In addition, LTAC has spent quite a bit of time discussing open education resources, and we have worked with coordinating board staff on the OER grant program that is currently in process, and we have had ongoing discussions with various schools, vendors, and individuals that are providing open education resources in Texas. Along these same lines, we have also been discussing what's known as inclusive access. Inclusive access of course materials is something that allows institutions to sign up for the entire class, and then the costs of textbooks, which typically, according to Inside Higher Ed, could be as much as 70% discounted, would be passed on to the students as part of their tuition and fee dollars. which means that on the first day of class, students have access to all of their materials before the semester gets started. We feel that inclusive access and OER are two initiatives that we should continue to look at because it will help colleges and universities lower the cost of higher education in Texas, because it could lower the cost of textbooks. We also did our second distance education survey, which is a statewide survey on distance education technologies and learning technologies offered in Texas. The survey goes to all universities and community colleges and members of and schools in the private area. This survey asks things like, what learning management system do you use? Do you have a different cost structure for online classes? Who owns intellectual property? How do you maintain quality and control of the course? What training do faculty have to go through? And how are you making sure the students enrolled in the class are those that are actually participating in the class? So that is the work that LTAC has done over the past year. We're continuing a lot of this work, and I feel that it is a very beneficial committee and work that we do on behalf of Texas, and I'm open to answer any of your questions.
Any questions for Dr. Louder? Comments? If not, thank you very much, Dr. Louder, and thank you. Please let the committee, LTAC, know about we appreciate all the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to Agenda Item 5B, which is a report to the Committee on Activities of the Workforce Education Course Manual Advisory Committee. No actions required. Our guest is Ms. Joyce Williams, who's the chair of this committee, and Ms. Williams will provide a brief update on their activities. Welcome, Ms. Williams.
Chair and the committee. The purpose of the Welcome Advisory Committee is to provide the board with advice and recommendations regarding content, structure, and currency and presentation of the Workforce Education Course Manual, which is a statewide inventory of approved workforce courses. The task of the advisory committee includes addition, deletion, revisions of courses in the manual to review our local course requests from the colleges and as well as the workforce. The membership of this advisory committee is composed of 24 members that are representatives of the sample of community colleges throughout the state, including TSTC and Lamar state colleges. And in addition to that, state organizations that represent continuing education, non-credit, as well as credit programs. The activities within our workforce education course manual committee, WECM, has been working with workforce needs and looking at guided pathways, including reviewing of the GIPWE, which is Guidelines for Instructional Workforce Programs, looking at WECM protocols that review the processes that are catalysts for being able to make these changes in the course manual. Sorry, I don't want to repeat that all over again. So I will just start where I left off. The WECM protocols is when we update those WECM protocols and looking at a catalyst for being able to review the industry needs and being able to respond, to be able to quickly respond to their needs of revising courses within the workforce manual. An example of that I'm excited about, and I want to thank this committee as well as the coordinating board staff. We had an opportunity that I don't think many states have. We had an IT company that went to the governor's office and said there was an expressed concern about the labor market and the competencies of the skills of the students and potential labor pool for the state of Texas. And the coordinating board staff responded rapidly based on, again, this flexibility in the process of being able to respond to workforce needs. And along with the workforce course manual committee, which is the WECM Advisory Committee, we pulled together colleges from around the state, IT companies from around the state. We had a workshop, and based on that information that we gather from companies based on the faculty, those changes are now in process to be put in the workforce manual to be able to be used across all of our community colleges in the state to be able to respond to that need. That need, of course, is in the area of cloud computing, which is pervasive around all of the needs in the state in every occupation that you can name in the country. But one of the comments that the company left with, and it was a low whisper, but it became a loud bang in my heart. And they said that, I cannot believe that Texas, what you just done in Texas, took 6 weeks compared to the taking 2 years in California. So today I sit before you as a proud Texan to be able to say, I think we're probably on the verge of having something here. So our recommendation would be to look at, in the future, actually presenting a program of study in cloud computing for the entire state for all of the community colleges across the state. So I thank you so much for your support. And I thank you because, again, this relationship with this company has also given us an opportunity for our colleges to receive free certification testing as well as free training for the faculty. They've committed to that for the entire state. And again, to be able to say that in 6 weeks, this coordinating board, the staff responded, and what took California 2 years to do. So I'm glad that this is recorded. Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair?
Ms. Williams.
Any questions?
Any questions or comments, discussion for Ms. Williams?
Okay.
Okay, there's no discussion. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for your service, and please pass along to your committee as well. We appreciate all the work that you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 5C is a report to the Committee on Activities of the Apply Texas Advisory Committee. This is an information item only. We'll welcome up to the stand Dr. Rebecca Lotheringer and Ms. Dana Fields, co-chairs of this committee, will provide a brief update of their activities. We welcome you as well, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. On behalf of our advisory committee, I thank you for this time to come before the board today to tell you a little bit about what we've accomplished this past year. The purpose of the Applied Texas Advisory Committee is to discuss and vote on changes that may be needed for the application in the upcoming application cycle. The committee addresses initiatives to strengthen student participation and access to higher education. This past year, as part of our program, we provided oversight to the application. We also provided a training, a one-day workshop for the universities and colleges to be able to send folks in to learn better how to use efficiently and effectively the application. And we provided updates that were suggested in order to make the application more efficient and more available to students for their benefit. Some of those I'd like to highlight at this time. The advisory committee supported and provided guidance for future enhancements as we move to the Amazon Web Services. This move to Amazon Web Services will allow for significant enhancements, including a responsive design, more flexible file delivery options, data warehouse, and usability improvements. This is by far the biggest change that we've made to the application in many years, and will definitely move us very far forward in providing a more effective application for our students. We also, based on some problems that we were having in some of the colleges with fake applications coming in, we added a Recaptcha so that the students will have to go in and say that they are not a computer, and that will help eliminate some of the fake applications that we had coming through to some of the colleges. We had to, in mid-cycle, take care of the general data protection regulation that came down to us. GDPR was brought in mid-cycle, and where we normally bring in things for the next cycle, we had to quickly move with the technical team to make sure that we met this requirement in May of this year, and did that in advance of rolling out the other items that were actually rolled out this summer. A new audit was provided to prevent students from submitting the wrong application type. Again, this came from both colleges and students, with confusion from the students saying that they weren't exactly sure which application they should submit. We added in an audit that helps them make sure that they're providing the right application, thus making it more, the university is able to enter their applications quicker without any errors. Students can use their email address to now get to their username easily. They do create a profile when they start their application, but they would forget their username. So now that username is an email, making it much easier for them to remember. A new school search tool was implemented, making it easier for them to fill out their schools in the application. A partial page save feature was added to the extracurricular activity page. This came both from high school counselors and from students who said this is a quite lengthy section for the application, and instead of having to do everything at one time, they wanted to be able to save and come back to that. So we were able to add that this past year. We also added the Texas conservatorship questions to better identify students who might be eligible for financial aid and other assistance for students who have been placed in foster care. These are some of the main highlights. We also had additional effectiveness and efficiency changes that we made to questions, or the universities and colleges submitted ideas for us to consider in making the application stronger for our students in Texas. The list of the advisory committee members and the additional changes have all been included for your reading pleasure. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those.
Yes, Ms. Acosta has a question.
Good morning, and thank you to your committee. I would love to hear just a brief kind of description of how the Amazon Web Services worked and how that came about. It sounds like it really allows, you know, all universities and especially the students to have the flexibility. I'm familiar with how it currently is set, so it sounds exciting that you've made some great strides. Would you mind
Yes.
sharing that with us?
Sure, it is very exciting. We are in our second year of the 2-year implementation, so we are not fully implemented at this time.
Okay.
We have, this year, we know we're going to be able to roll out the responsive design will be part of the feature. So we do know that students now, for many students, their home computer is actually their phone that they carry with them. The application now will be responsive so that the students will be able to see in the next cycle. The application will be responsive so that they're using their phone. It actually will fit onto their phone and be much easier for them to be able to complete the application process that way. We can expect the AWS implementation to be finished at the end of this current academic year, which will then allow us in the next cycle to be able to make some of these additional changes that we have already begun discussing in the advisory committee and taking ideas from the universities and colleges and high school counselors as to what they'd like us to approach next.
And so how did this come about? Did someone from the committee or, you know, share with us, are they doing this other places, other states, or?
We have a fantastic technical team that is housed at UT Austin, led by Tim Brace. And Tim brought it to the committee. We knew that we were starting to fall behind in our technology platform, and AWS was one that Tim had researched, looking at many different options, and had found that to be very strong platform for applications. I believe the Common App has already moved to AWS and is using that as their platform. So he did a lot of investigating and looking at the different options and chose AWS, and then brought it to the committee for our approval to say, yes, this is the platform we'd like to move forward. We know that we need to continue to move forward with technology in order to take care of our students in Texas and make sure that we're able to provide them a way to access higher education easily.
Excellent. Thank you. Chairman Stedman?
Okay, so I wish Mr. Plank were here, because
Thinking the
the
same thing.
last meeting, he has a son going through, you know, an application process, apply Texas. And I think you corrected the problem. I think his main problem was when you did an essay and you hit something that transmitted it, or kind of, anyway, he couldn't change it. It was like stuck. He couldn't revise it. But you just said, well, you can save it, right? You've kind of got it to where you can save it and then come back to it. Does that solve Mr. Plank's son's problem? Not knowing exactly what that is.
I was thinking.
Not completely, no. The issue that he had, and unfortunately would still be an issue, is once the student submits the essay, it fires off and goes to the universities. So then there's not a way at this point still for us to be able to call that back, or the student to call it back and say, now I want to make a change once they've submitted it. While they're in the process of writing the essay, they can save along the way, and then, but when they submit it, it does go away. It leaves the server.
Okay, I'll communicate that to him. He shouldn't have pressed send, basically. Okay.
Make sure you have everything you want on there before you hit send.
So you can save it and then come back 2 hours later and log back in and work on it more?
Yes, with the essay, and that's actually something that has been in place for a while with the essay. We made that change to extracurricular activities this year so that students could come back and complete their extracurricular activities page later. Essay is something students can hold on to and make changes there for as long as they need. But unfortunately, once they hit submit, it leaves that server and it flies off to those universities and gets downloaded into our systems.
You mentioned on the username that you've changed it to their email address. Obviously, you still have a password, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we
okay.
do.
Okay.
And students do sometimes have to contact us to find out which email address they've used.
All right.
But it's a little bit easier than us just making up a username for them.
Okay. Great. So any other questions for Dr. Lothringer or Ms. Fields? Welcome. Would you like to say a few things about the program? Or
I think Dr. Lothringer said it all.
Okay.
But I mean, we're happy. I mean, our committee is a great committee, and we work very hard to make sure that the application is useful to students and user-friendly. So we have an excellent committee.
Given how traumatic applying to college is, it's gratifying to know that you've made it a little bit easier. I think students, by and large, regarding the essay, they probably, since they have to submit an essay, they're probably submitting it on the last day that you can apply to college. And so probably, if you gave more time, they probably would miss a deadline. So.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yes, Gerald.
I also want to commend the committee. They've worked hard, and they're doing a lot of work with less meetings. They've been very conscious of the cost of what it's been for the advisory committees. But they've also recently started looking at modernizing the application, really looking at all the applications in the country, making sure that our application is new and fresh and kept up to date. We spent time improving the counselor suite, which is different than any other application in the country, where K-12 counselors have access to whether their students actually completed the application, or the FAFSA, which doesn't happen with all those other national applications. It's only here in Texas. So that's just something I wanted to point out that the committee.
Let me add one benefit of this you haven't mentioned, and I think the Common Application, of course, contributed to this too, because this is a national trend. But when this process started, we found that in Texas, most students were applying to one institution. And we found, very early on, we had 2,000 students that were turned down and didn't enroll at any institution in Texas at all. And so their work has helped make it easier for students to apply to more than one. Some overdo it. But I think it's helped increase our college participation, because, as you know, filling out these applications, whether it's an old form or this, is not an easy process. So another contribution you've made over time in terms of expanding participation.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? If not, thank you so much for the work, and appreciate all that you do. Please send the best to the committee. It's a very important one, and we obviously want to encourage students to apply for higher education in our state, and this process streamlines that process. So thank you for the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5D1 is consideration of adopting the staff's recommendation to the committee relating to the request from Tarleton State University for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in criminal justice. Members, you have supplemental material of this item in your packets, and Dr. Peebles is going to give us a report and an update on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. At the outset, I would like to point out that this would outside of their existing EDD program, this would be Tarleton State's first PhD program, first doctoral program. And I would also like to comment that this whole process reminds me of the Grateful Dead's line, "What a long, strange trip it's been." Or at least it's certainly been a long trip. I really don't know how long the institution has been working on this. I'm sure they've told me more than once, and I've just put it out of my mind. But I do know that coordinating board staff has been working on this proposal for almost 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken, and it has been through more than one iteration and many changes. For example, as originally proposed, the program was almost strictly a program designed for professionals and also for practice in the field. But due to site visit comments, they have now reconfigured the program a bit so that while its focus is still on training people to be actively engaged and work in the field of criminal justice, it's also designed to educate and to train future educators in criminal justice as well. Another major change is it sort of started with 2 tracks, one of which was cybersecurity, and that has now been revised so that it is more of a straightforward criminal justice program in and of itself, and leaving off those sort of tracks. So there's been a lot of work done on this, and I certainly appreciate both the cooperation of and certainly the indulgence of the institution itself. So this is a criminal justice doctoral program designed to cater to working professionals and also designed for people who would continue to practice in the profession itself. It's a face-to-face program. It will be offered at Tarleton Southwest Metroplex Center in Fort Worth. So it will be in the heart of a bunch of folks who may wish to enter into this program. It's 120 hours. Now I've completely lost track of what I was going to say, so my apologies. They intend to enroll a small number of students to begin with and then ramp this program up over time. As you can see, the initial costs are about $4.8 million, and they anticipate revenues of about $4.9 million. It includes criminology courses, but the focus of it, again, is on things like statistics and analytical data use and so forth that goes into the practice of criminal justice. And we have several folks from Tarleton State here with us today.
And we'd like to invite them up if they're here. The president's here, I believe, correct?
He is.
Yes. Please come forward. Representatives of Tarleton State University.
That's okay.
Tarleton State.
So there are currently 5 public universities in Texas that offer a criminal justice program at the doctoral level, and this would be the only program of its kind certainly in the Metroplex. Now, the University of Texas at Dallas offers a PhD in criminology, but it is focused on the traditional field of criminology, which is somewhat of an offshoot of sociology. So this program has a very different emphasis and a very different focus than UT Dallas's program does. But we'll let them.
Great. Welcome, President Dr. Dattavino. Did I pronounce that right?
Dattavio.
Dattavio, thank you.
Okay. My father mispronounces it as well.
And Dr. Murray, that's a little easier to pronounce. And Dr. Del Carmen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, welcome, first of all, and thank you for being here. I would like to just comment that I think this is a great program because you're allowing folks that are working and that have a passion for criminal justice that, protect our society. And I know a lot of folks that are in the criminal justice field, and I think, the Doctor of Philosophy degree in this area is very important. And so you being able to offer that to working Texans and folks from really around the country, because I don't think, Rex, are there very many PhD programs that we know of? And I didn't think so. And so That's right. So it's a great focus. So first of all, I want to compliment you on doing that. And then if you could please, tell us a little bit about Tarleton State also on the way, just give us an update, and then also about the program and what your initial thoughts were when you developed it.
Okay. Well, let me begin by first saying really two things. One is for you to understand that we are fully supportive at the provost level and the president's level of developing this program. It's something certainly that puts us on a different type of track than we've had in the past. So we're very excited about it and very supportive of it. And I would probably use maybe the long and winding road of the Beatles to describe this rather than Grateful Dead. But I do want to express a great deal of appreciation to certainly Rex and the staff, the commissioner for coming up and visiting with us to understand a little bit about what it is that we've been doing with regard to student success and how it is that this really fits with who we are as a university these days, and that intentional focus that we've had on really reshaping the university and making it something that that lives out what is our vision statement, which is to be the premier student-focused university in Texas and beyond. So we think we've made a lot of progress in that, and I could not be more proud of the faculty that have gathered together some tremendous experts in the field to put together this proposal. What I would do then is defer to either Dr. Murray or Dr. Alex Del Carmen, who's the executive director of our School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies, to talk about the proposal specifically.
I just want to echo what Rex said. This has been a process that we've engaged with the coordinating board for over 4 years, but on our own campus for even a couple of years beyond that. As a part of our academic and strategic plan, we have a very large master's program, and this was a very natural step for us to take in order to elevate the profile of the university and offer opportunities for students that we were already engaging. There are more than 3 of us here. There are a large group of faculty who've been engaged in this. If I could just ask them to please stand so that you can see their time commitment in this through a 5-year process. We're very proud of them, and it's a program that we're going to be very proud of.
Excellent.
Dr. DeCrum.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Thank you all for having us this morning. I know your time is precious. Very briefly, I'll just share with you a personal story. I spent 17 years at UT Arlington. I am an implant from Florida, and then before that from Nicaragua. So I been in Texas for 21 years, married a native Texan, so that makes me a proud Texan based on the previous comments that were made. But I spent 17 years at UTA, and 4 years ago the provost called me and said, you know, we've been paying attention to the work that you do in the context of practitioner-based, and we'd like to invite you to come to Tarleton. I think we had lunch, and that lunch developed into a job interview, and 4 years later, we're really proud to have before you what has been constructed by many of us that have been working hand in hand with people in the field. I often say that the best quote to describe who we are is we serve those that serve. And at the end of the day, when people call 911 and they expect an educated police officer to show up, when they expect somebody that's going to adhere to the U.S. Constitution, that is the individual that we want to educate. I personally have spent the past 5 years working on the most significant federal reform cases throughout the United States as a federal monitor, in addition to my work at Tarleton. And I can't tell you how proud I am that part of the civil rights components, part of the education component of this program is going to face and allow us in Texas to be in many, many ways at the tip of that spear, you know, throughout the United States, of having educated criminal justice professionals that are going to have hands-on applications. And to answer the question on how many other programs throughout the U.S., Northeastern is about the only one that's pretty far away from Texas that would actually be a direct competitor of what we're going to try to build here. So we appreciate your time, but as you can tell, we're very passionate about what we're doing because we have been working on it for 4 years, but we definitely think the effort is worthwhile, and are happy to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes, well, I visited Tarleton, I guess about 4 years ago, and Professor, you made a presentation on the work you were doing. I thought it was enormously impressive, and one of the best examples of how universities can actually do public service by providing an indispensable service to police departments and communities, not only in Texas but beyond. I do have one recommendation. I read your proposal. I read all the proposals for doctoral programs. And I do have one recommendation. It's based on my own experience as a graduate student, based on my experience as a graduate dean. In the proposal, you say that students that are expected to take their qualifying exams in the third year. And I don't know if that's a policy or if that's a rule, but I would urge you to be more flexible since this is a program that will involve practitioners. I think it may be the case that some people will be able to take their qualifying exams well before that. In my position, when I was a graduate dean, my position was let the students take their qualifying exams whenever they want. If they think they're ready, let them do it. The worst thing that can happen is they don't pass them and they have to take them again the subsequent year. But for those students that are willing to work really hard and get ready sooner than is a norm, don't take that opportunity away from them. That would reduce cost, it would reduce expense to the students and so forth. So I would ask you to be flexible in when students take their qualifying exams. Let them take them when they think they're ready. I know that the qualifying exams will be rigorous, and students will, if they can pass them, let them move on as quickly as possible.
Yes, sir, duly noted, and I completely agree with you. I think that is very, very important that we show flexibility on our end to allow them. I mean, many of them are parents, many of them have 2 or 3 jobs, and on top of that, the toughest job in the world, which is to serve the community. Absolutely.
Chairman Stedman.
Okay, so a couple of questions. One, well, first question, you abandoned Rec Said cybersecurity emphasis, so that's not what you're doing.
Right, so the recommendation was made that we simply focused on one instead of both.
I see.
And so for now, what we've done is we've abandoned it, yes, sir.
Okay, and so the person that gets a PhD from your program, I mean, he's not going to be responding, he or she is not going to be responding to a 911 call, right? I mean, it's more of a analysis type. Describe the job that this person would have in a police department or a law enforcement department.
Right, so the best example that I can cite is the city of Arlington, Texas, right? Arlington has a requirement currently, and has had one for about 21 years, of having every police officer that they hire has to have a bachelor's degree. So currently Arlington has about 25% of its police force that they have master's degree, and about 5 police officers that are responding to 911 calls that have PhDs. Now, that's not what we're trying to necessarily replicate here, but at the end of the day, our graduates are going to be individuals that are going to be policymakers, that are going to be trainers, that are going to be police chiefs, and in some cases, while they're going through the program, they may in fact be patrol officers. And so we're obviously going to be educating individuals as they come up through the ranks, and as they, at some point receive their PhD, they're likely not going to go back to being a 911 responder, right? But during that process, they're likely going to be in that patrol car. That is very feasible and very likely.
Okay, but this is partly my ignorance about law enforcement. So describe, other than police chief, sort of data analysis, or I mean, what would this person do in a police department setting?
Right, so first of all, it's not exclusively a police-related degree, right? Because we obviously, when we say criminal justice, we also adhere to the courts and also the correctional component. For the past 10 years, there's been a focus nationwide on predictability, data analysis, right? The idea that in order to be smarter in the job that we do as criminal justice practitioners, that we actually let the data simply drive some of that decision-making processes, right? And so by virtue of that, what we're going to try to do is train individuals to understand data, to be able to challenge it when necessary, and be able to, in many ways, make those policy recommendations, and as we call it in law enforcement, data-driven leadership. The idea that the data is going to drive that leadership component. So in terms of jobs, we listed those in the proposal, but there are multiple, dozens of employers right now that are seeking that practitioner, PhD combination that would allow them to serve in various different facets of what they do.
Let me, I heard an example of research one of you, I don't know if it was you, Dr. Murray, had done, which shows how it could, research could influence action in terms of strangulation and how you might deal with that differently now given the research. I think it's very specific and understandable.
Yeah, so currently we just received a grant from the National Institute of Justice on research that we are doing right now with the police department, with the Burleson Police Department, on strangulation. And one of the things that we are beginning to find out is that individuals that engage in domestic violence, when they combine strangulation as part of that, the data seems to show that there is a 25-30% more likelihood that that person is going to end up killing the victim at some point. And so the National Institute of Justice felt that this was worthy of investigating and finding out. And I believe that Burleson has currently in place a local ordinance that they passed, which is the first one in the state of Texas, related to that because of the research that we continue to do. So you're exactly right. This would be a premier example of the kind of work that we're doing.
Commissioner?
The one thing that you talked about, Professor, when I was there was the way you can analyze data, and you can offer police departments some very useful information about how to deploy community policing resources. That you analyze, it's a little bit, it's kind of an iteration of the James Q. Wilson broken windows theory, that you can learn a lot about a community by studying characteristics like the nature of the neighborhood and how well maintained it is and so forth. And you can make some very careful, calculated, and useful decisions about where police officers, what kind of community patrolling you should have, and where you should deploy resources to prevent the expansion of crime and so forth. And obviously that kind of analysis requires the skills that you will be teaching in the program.
That's exactly right, yes, sir. And the idea of predicting, when the next crime is going to take place based on previous data. Yes, sir.
And if I may, many people don't know this, but I do have a master's in criminology, so I will look into that project. But part of that is not only law enforcement from police, but probation officers and where they're deployed and how they're doing, courts. If you serve in jury duty, it's a nightmare on how you manage the courts, and a lot of that does require that sort of predictive analytics. Late 80s, early 90s, crime stat in New York and Baltimore was the rave, and a lot of departments just did not have the staffing. Like smaller institutions don't have the expertise in data analytics to do what the larger departments did. So there's definitely a need for this, even for the smaller departments, as crime moves. It doesn't stay where it needs to. But there's definitely a growing need for this. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yes, Rex?
Yeah, just two additional comments about the proposal and the program itself. And one is that degrees that are often focused on practice, in a sense, do not tend to offer much financial support for students, because the working assumption always is that the students that will be in this program are working practitioners already, or they're already working professionals, and so they're going to continue to work, so why do they need financial support? But Tarleton has committed to offering at least $160,000 a year annually for support for students that are in this program. As we know, a lot of police officers and firefighters and so forth, for that matter, will often take other jobs in their off time to supplement income. This would be a way for making up for that if they go into the program. So I think that's something that's commendable as well, about offering financial support in a program where you where you don't usually see it. And the other comment I'd like to make is it goes back to the commissioner's comments about taking qualifying exams, but this relates to giving credit for coursework. And the institution had originally proposed allowing students to, through some kind of testing or a portfolio or whatever, but to look at the kind of training, the kind of education they had, and where it was possible to give students credit for their experiences and their prior knowledge and prior skills and training coming into the program. The site team actually recommended that that part of the proposal be removed and said that that's really not a good idea. And the institution came back and said, no, we still think it's a good idea to do so. And so they still intend to do that as well. So
You're right, by the way.
Thank you.
If since they've been out for a while, how are you handling the admissions in terms of the GRE? If people have taken the GRE, is there a certain amount of time would they have to take the GRE, even if they took it, let's say, 25 years ago?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, there's a normative, span, obviously, in which the GRE is valid, but I think the uniqueness about our approach to this, based on the type of student that's likely going to be applying to our program, is that we're going to look at the whole overall component of the student, right? So we're going to go through a pretty arduous process of making sure that we're giving a chance to people that show promise, that in terms of a PhD, but the GRE is going to be obviously considered, but there are going to be other factors as well that are going to be in place.
So you have a holistic approach to admissions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I always ask that question. Okay. Any other discussion or questions about that? If not, do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation? Okay, so a move by Mr. Wilson, second by Ms. Acosta. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
so
for being
much.
here. Okay, we move on to agenda item 5D2, which is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the request from Texas State University for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in civil engineering. We can have representation. Anyone here to represent Texas State University? Please move forward. Thank you. Let them have a seat before. I'll introduce our guests, and then we'll go over to Dr. Peebles for the proposal. Welcome, President. Thank you for being here. I'll let y'all introduce yourselves if you may.
I'm Denise Trouth. I have the privilege of being the president of Texas State University.
I'm John Chummel. I'm a faculty member, the lone faculty member in civil engineering right now.
My name is Chris Haley. I'm the dean of the College of Science and Engineering in which this program would reside.
And Jean Bourgeois, the provost and vice president for academic affairs.
Okay, welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. So this is a proposal for a bachelor's degree in civil engineering at Texas State University. Oh, sorry. And at the outset, I would like to point out that you have two proposals for bachelor's of engineering degrees in front of you this morning. And one is at, relative to each other, one is a very high cost and one is very low cost. And you may wonder why that is the case, and it has to do with, a lot of it has to do with economies of scale, so to speak, and that is that Texas State University has 4 other existing engineering programs. The university, Texas A&M University, rather, has 16 other engineering programs, and so they have the ability to draw off existing equipment, existing labs. And their program is in environmental engineering, which also allows them to draw off of many other disciplines as well in order to offer the kind of content that they need. And for Texas State, with the civil engineering program, and particularly this one that has a focus on the smart cities aspect, which is designed to look at cities and their infrastructure and how to make that better, then requires for them, it's going to require more faculty, more lab space, more equipment, and that kind of thing to offer the program. But it does have a focus on what's typically referred to as technology-enhanced infrastructure. So it will be somewhat unique in the state of Texas to have that kind of approach, and I'm sure in a moment they can tell us more about that as well. They will hire 3 faculty members in 2020. They'll have 6 core faculty members starting in 2021 and 4 more in fall of 2022. So they have certainly made the appropriate planning has gone into this to be able to ramp this program up as they go along and then graduate people in 4 years. And so it'll be a 126 semester credit hour program face-to-face, and the 126 hours as opposed to 120 is almost exclusively due to the requirements of ABET, which is the accrediting body for engineering programs, and we expect engineering programs in Texas to seek accreditation as soon as they can, which they can do after they have their first graduate. So.
Okay, thank you. Would y'all like to give some comments, or Chairman Stedman?
What did you just say, that you get accredited but only after the first graduate? So what if the student graduates and then you don't get accreditation, so what happens then?
Well,
condition.
That's a good question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that. But,
It's retroactive. So the students went through an accredited program once you achieve it. And
so 2 or 3 years later, you get, say accreditation was delayed, then he gets...
The students graduated from an accredited program, yes.
Gotcha.
They can say that, yes.
But that's pretty standard, right?
Yes, that's the way it
I mean, when
works.
there's new programs or new schools, they have to finish the first cohort, complete graduation, and that's part of the accreditation process, yeah.
The whole process.
That's right, that's right. Yes, it's a standard process, yeah, okay. Please.
Well, let me just kick this off by saying I'm here to support this wonderful team of people who've been working on this degree program for several years. This will be the 7th engineering program that Texas State has. We already have 3 baccalaureate programs. The enrollment in those undergraduate programs is very robust. We now have over 2,000 students in those 3 baccalaureate programs. As the dean, I'm sure, is going to tell you, the College of Science and Engineering is now the largest college at Texas State University, and that is due in great part to the enrollment in the engineering programs. I'm also here to say that, yes, this is an expensive program, but it's one strategically that the university knows that particularly Central Texas needs. The workforce demand is there. It is a unique program in that it's focused on smart infrastructure, and we're really excited about implementing this. And now let me ask our provost to begin.
Yes. Well, that she's up here at the table with us, I think, speaks volumes to what I think many of you know, and that is at Texas State University under President Denise Trouth, we employ a very deliberate, very, very deliberate planning process. And that's for our university plan that includes academic planning and then also master planning. And so for this proposal, kind of as Dr. Peebles stated, it did involve looking out ahead at additional facilities that we would need, additional equipment that we would need, and then in my area, of course, it also involves planning for the net new faculty members and the net new graduate students. And at the cabinet level, then, there are decisions that are made based upon our plans to basically provide that bridge support, the bridge funding support, to grow into these brand new programs. We know that in the end, the net revenue will cover the cost of the program, but up front, yes, it will cost some money. I think in addition, we're very cognizant of what the coordinating board has been asking of universities when proposing new programs, and I think that we continue to hit those marks that you all expect. Is there a proven job market need for this program? Absolutely. Is there a demonstrated program need? Absolutely. Do we have a sound curriculum that's tailored to meet the needs of today's students and tomorrow's students? Absolutely, and they'll continue to talk about that technology-enhanced infrastructure component. Do we provide opportunities for competency-based education? Yes. Do we have viable student enrollment projections? Yes. And then, as President Trouth just noted, in the end, she and the CFO at the institution sign off on this proposal because they believe that we have presented a very sound financial plan for this new civil engineering degree program. So next up, I think, is our dean, Dean Chris Haley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman and members of the committee, for letting me speak for just a few minutes for something of which I'm very proud. I've been at Texas State for 2.5 years now, and I have learned the value of strategic planning. I took the position and basically was informed that next in the plan was a undergraduate degree in civil engineering. And so it was with support of other folks that we were able to develop this proposal. But it was really clear from the moment I took the job that this was the next step. So the planning is very real at Texas State University. This is the #1 strategic goal within the College of Science and Engineering. It helps achieve our mission, which is to serve the citizens of Texas, the nation, with educational and research programs that facilitate innovation and economic development. It is our intention to get ABET accreditation as soon as possible, which is 4 years when the first graduate's out the door. So we've worked very, very hard to be sure the curriculum meets all of the requirement of the Engineering Accreditation Commission within ABET so that our graduates can become licensed professional engineers as soon as possible. The strength, I believe, of this proposed program is this idea of infusing technology-enhanced infrastructure concepts throughout the curriculum. So graduates of this program will understand sensor technologies, communication systems, real-time monitoring of physical infrastructure assets, data-driven performance, decision-making strategies, so that when they graduate, they can be part of a multidisciplinary team. They're not going to do this alone, but as part of a multidisciplinary team, be able to manage the long-term maintenance, safety, and security of Texas infrastructure assets. We've been very, very encouraged by the support for this program. We've had an external review team come in. We've had a number of people write letters of support for us. The president tells me anytime she turns around, people ask her, when are you going to get the civil engineering program online? So I think we've got very, very good support. I'd like to just conclude by quoting from Mark Janey, who's the vice president of Tetra Tech, who said, as infrastructure and engineering projects increase in scope and complexity, the company will need engineers with broad, multidisciplinary skills to address important market challenges and to adapt to the presence and application of multiple technologies. And I believe that graduates of this program will indeed fit that bill. So thank you for your time.
Good morning. I'm just going to touch on 3 items that have been alluded to here and just a little bit further information, and then if there are questions, we can answer those. From the standpoint of the job market analysis, we did a pretty, I think, thorough job of looking at the job market and identified roughly 670 openings on an annual basis for civil engineers in Texas. So when you look at the actual numbers, that's a significant number of positions. This comes from state labor statistics, from the demographics of the universities looking at each of the civil engineering programs in the state, as well as an examination of employment opportunities across the state. And the interesting part of all of this is even with a program that is projected to have 500 students at the 5-year mark, we still won't close the gap of those 670 job opportunities that are out there on an annual basis in the state. So we'll make a significant contribution to the workforce, but there still will be a gap. Second item I wanted to touch on is this idea of the technology-enhanced infrastructure, and people use the word smart cities and smart infrastructure. Technology-enhanced infrastructure, I think, is a little better terminology because not everything is actually smart in the world that we're describing. But what we're going to be doing, as the dean had said, is take traditional engineering another step forward and look at how do we actually monitor, maintain, and manage infrastructure, and that's all infrastructure for the purpose of public safety and economic value of that infrastructure over its lifetime. This is a program that we believe is unmatched by any other program in Texas, and there's only a few nationally that have a resemblance to what we're proposing here. Long term, I think one of the benefits that's going to be to the state is that as our students go out into the workforce and actually implement these technology-enhanced infrastructure concepts, they're going to save their local municipalities money. They're going to save the state money because we're going to be doing a better job of managing and maintaining our infrastructure. So the cost to do that long-term will lessen and the state will benefit. The last item that was briefly mentioned is multidisciplinary nature of the program. We actually had great experience across campus meeting with people in geography, math, computer science, concrete industry management, biology, all of the engineering programs to help form this curriculum. So this is not one that is just civil engineers teaching other civil engineers. We actually are going to be having courses being offered by faculty in these other areas where their expertise lies. So our students are going to be in classes with majors from these other programs. And we think that's really going to be enriching to their academic experience because they will be in technology-focused programs with people from these other departments on campus. So I thank you for your time. I'm very excited for fall of 2019 as a civil engineer at Texas State.
Great. Any comments, questions? Ms. Acosta?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it Dr. Schemmel?
Yes, correct.
Is that correctly? So I just noticed the curriculum you mentioned briefly that you're going to be including in part of this program. And I didn't hear anything about finance or accounting or budgeting. But could I just recommend, just being in the industry myself, that is one of the things that we are finding across the state that is missing in a lot of engineering and construction management programs is we're not teaching how you budget, how you manage a project budget, what is accounting, and at the very end of the day, companies end up having to spend a year or a year and a half teaching a civil engineer how to manage a budget. And at the end of the day, to save a client money, you must understand those concepts. So I just want to throw that in there because that is traditionally something that the industry is pushing consistently with universities is what are you teaching in the finance side of the house? The technology is great. It's beautiful. We've got amazing programs out there, but could I just encourage you to consider that?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I just want to say, Dr. Stroud, thank you for all the work that you do. And, you know, since I've been on the board and since early 2015, your university was the first one to send me what your updates are. And since then, other people listened and started sending me and the coordinating board members. But I really do appreciate that way at the beginning when I first met you. And so I know that all the universities have challenges and all, but I think you guys are doing a great job because remember, it's about the students. Number one, and I think that we all have challenges in higher education, and I keep up with all the schools and systems as much as I can, but I appreciate y'all reaching out, and you know, I keep up with your alumni and friends group through your booklet and your information, so I do appreciate that, and I know that sometimes we get so busy with all the challenges that we have, but you know, at the end of the day, in higher education, it's about educating students and helping to be productive citizens and all that. And so I just kind of remind people that sometimes when we have tough challenges and tough decisions on this board as well, because that's what we all have passion about, higher education and making sure giving people opportunities. So I appreciate all that Texas State is doing in that behalf. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
I move for approval.
Okay, a second. Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Acosta, a second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we moving on to agenda item 5E is an update on the committee on the strategic plan for graduate education. No action required. Rex?
We have 5D. We still need to do 5D3.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Consideration of adopting the staff recommendation of the committee relating to the request for Texas A&M University for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in environmental engineering. Do we have some representatives from Texas A&M? And we do. And before, Rex, we do that report, what's that? I'll wait for you. Go ahead. Keep going.
This will only take an hour.
Yeah, that's okay. No, you're good. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. She can't leave, right? Because it goes to quorum.
Good question.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Okay. So please introduce yourselves and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here. I'm Dr. Robin Ottenreith. I'm the department head of civil engineering at Texas A&M University.
And I'm Dr. Mara London, the director of the environmental engineering program.
Welcome. And now Dr. Peoples will give a report on the proposal.
So this would be A&M's 18th bachelor's degree in engineering. I misspoke earlier. I had forgotten that we had approved, I think it was a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering a while back for A&M, and I thought A&M already had every engineering degree there was to have, but apparently not, and so they're here today to have a major in environmental engineering. It's a 128 semester credit hour face-to-face program that draws extensively off their existing resources already. As I mentioned earlier, both in terms of equipment and labs and that kind of thing, but also in terms of faculty as well that can contribute to this program, making it very cost-effective. So the cost does come in very low. Environmental engineers use principles of engineering, soil science, biology, and chemistry to develop solutions to environmental problems. And so, as a result, they're involved in efforts to improve things like recycling and waste disposal, public health and water and pollution control. They have the faculty that they need to start this program in fall of 2019, and they have committed to hiring 2 new faculty in 2020 as enrollment grows, and they need more expertise and so forth. One other thing I wanted to mention about this, and I already touched on the low costs a little bit, but it really does have to do with the kind of economies of scale that they have available to them, and the fact that they're able to draw off of so much multidisciplinary expertise that they have within the program themselves, and I'm sure they can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, so in putting together the program, we received letters of support from various departments across the university because we have included several of their classes from the sciences in our curriculum as well as from across engineering. I should say that the Department of Civil Engineering is 74 faculty members, 55 tenure track. We have 8 areas of specialization within the department, one of which is within civil engineering is environmental engineering. And I've been with the university as a professor. My specialty is environmental engineering, and I am very pleased that after 32 years, we are before you to request consideration of a degree in environmental engineering.
And there's clearly a workforce demand for this program. There are 5 other engineering programs in Texas that awarded 33 bachelor's degrees, but our TWC estimates that there will be at least 150 average annual openings in this area over the next 10 years. So workforce demand is clearly there.
Okay. Dr. London, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I have the pleasure of teaching many of our civil engineering undergraduates in the environmental engineering coursework. And there is a large demand for students who want to specialize with the different types of coursework and bring in a little bit more of the natural sciences and the remediation and bioremediation aspects of environmental engineering. So getting this specialized BS program will really satisfy that need and that want from our students. And also we did an industry survey for just a lot of the companies that work with A&M or recruit from A&M, and also indicating, yes, that this is a degree program that they would like to see.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or discussion? If not, do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Costa. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we move on to Agenda Item 5E, an update to the Committee on the Strategic Plan for Graduate Education. There's no action required on this item. Rex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you know, you just witnessed, graduate education is very much alive and well in Texas. We have numerous programs. Sorry. Thank you, David. And the Graduate Education Advisory Committee was charged at least a couple of years ago now with creating a strategic plan for graduate education. And they have been working on this, and I think that they have done great work. I will also say that we had originally thought about trying to actually bring the graduate education strategic plan to you for approval today, but primarily because I had some questions about it, we have delayed it. But the questions are not because I don't think they've done excellent work so far. I think it's because there are still some issues that arose from the RAND report that, if you may recall, was done a couple of years ago by the RAND Corporation that looked at expanding graduate education in Texas. And while they have addressed many of the issues that were raised in that report, I believe that there are a couple of more to look at. So we're going to go back to them at their next meeting in January or February and have them take a quick look at that. And then we hope to bring this back to you for approval in spring or summer. They have aligned this around the 60 by 30 plan and have intentions of this being a plan for graduate education for the next 12 years. And let's see, there we go. And they have organized it around 4 priority areas: excellence in research and creative activity. And so this deals with the idea of how do you promote and how do you obtain PhDs and so forth in areas where research is needed, and then promoting excellence in research through funding, in the pursuit of funding and so forth. They've also identified high quality of and access to education. So one of the things that they've been very devoted to is the idea of being able to provide very good excellent graduate programs to everyone who wants one, so to speak. Now, we temper that a lot with workforce demand for these things, and I think it should be tempered by how much demand is there for students when they graduate from this, but they're also looking at that as well. They've also focused on the priority area of efficiency and innovation. And one of the things that they have picked up on from the RAND report is that RAND talks about where consolidation may be appropriate of programs, but also where it may be appropriate to work across institutions in programs. So there's not enough sort of critical mass at one institution, but by combining the efforts of 2 or 3 institutions, there may be enough critical mass to support a program. And then last but not least, they've also looked at things like marketable skills and economic development. And so they've really embraced the goal of 60 by 30 that talks about programs being able to identify marketable skills and tell their students what they are. And while we think that a lot of this ought to be obvious coming from a program, particularly graduate programs, we know that students often learn things in programs that are not necessarily obvious to them or necessarily obvious to others. And so part of the whole push behind identifying marketable skills and making them known to students and to employers is that students and employers will know not just that if you have a master's degree in accounting, you can do accounting, but that you may also be able to do other things as well in terms of analytical skills or whatever they may be. And the economic development part of this goes back to the notion of not only providing access to education through high-quality programs, but also providing access to high-quality programs that are going to help serve the workforce needs of the state as we go forward. We hope to bring this back in spring or at the very latest in summer for your approval of the full strategic plan.
Okay, thank you, Rex. Chairman Stedman?
So are universities that have, I don't know, low enrollment or, whatever program. I mean, whatever the need to combine to make, more achieve a critical mass. Do universities sort of recognize that they have a problem, and are they willing to say, hey, because the other choice, you can either go with a low performing program, they don't have the critical mass to do it. They can combine, or they could shut it down. So, if you comment on that.
So, and I do think that particularly in recent years, they have done, institutions have actually done a really good job of this, by and large. And part of that is due to the low producing report that we have every year that identifies institutions that are not graduating sufficient numbers of either master's degree students or doctoral students in a particular program. And they are then told that they're not graduating enough. They actually know this already, but formally they're told that they're not graduating enough, and then they either need to consolidate the program to close the program down, or justify to the Legislative Budget Board and to their own Board of Regents why they should keep that program going. And sometimes there are reasons for that, because the program may be providing a lot of support for other programs. For example, departments of physics is kind of a classic example of a program that supports an awful lot of other programs as well. So every engineering program requires physics in it, for example. But over the years, and we just looked at this last week or so about the number of programs created over the last 10 years, and I forget the number of graduate programs that were created, but I also had them look at the number of programs that were phased out over the past 10 years. And probably 80 to 90, the number of total programs approved was about 900, and that's bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs, but the total number of programs phased out over that time period was about 80 to 85% of that as well. So I think that surprisingly enough, I think that institutions actually have done a better job over the years of managing that aspect of it and closing where they simply don't have the support anymore in terms of students to keep that program going, or they have done some strategic consolidations of those programs.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Peebles. So just to remind you, we are live online, and if you're just tuning in, we're on the Committee of Academic Workforce Success. And if you're wondering, that it seems like Mr. Wilson and Ms. Acosta are the most attentive and always making the motions and seconding, it's because we do have a quorum of this committee, but it's because we have a couple members that aren't here, and so they have to be on their toes, which they always are anyway. But that's the reason why, in case you're wondering why they're making all the motions and seconds, that's the reason why. On to agenda item 5F, as consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the report on developmental education. Per Rider 33, 85th Texas Legislature regular session. Jarrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report is a report around dealing with underprepared students. I call it the Underprepared Students Jambalaya Report because it deals with not only Rider 33 in response to reporting on what's efficient and effective as far as helping developmental ed students, underprepared students. It also in response to, I think it was Senate Bill 1776 from the 85th, it requires us to report on the college prep course from high school. And then we also throw in our 5-year developmental ed plan of what we're going to be doing moving forward with some recommendations. So we hit a couple of those things in that report that you have. So as we talk about underprepared students, we're going to get a quick glimpse of what student preparation is. And when we do that, we consider college readiness. So what you'll see is 55.9% in FY 17 met TSI, met the Texas Success Initiative for our indicator of college readiness. That's an increase from the previous year. A very slight increase from the previous year, but it's something that we pay close attention to as far as college readiness. That cuts down on the number of students that are participating in Dev Ed. Now, also you may recall that there was a major policy shift the last session around House Bill 2223. You've heard us talk about co-requisite work, where we are required, for institutions are required to offer co-requisite education for their underprepared students. Let me just give you some data without co-rec. Just traditionally, 17% of our students are getting through their first level college course in the traditional way of DevEd for math, 39% for reading intensive courses, and 32% for writing intensive courses. So with those percentages, we've worked hard to try to get those percentages up here in the state of Texas. So the legislature came up with House Bill 2223, where you'll see there's a required phase-in of 25, 50, and 75% for institutions to offer that to their DevEd students. We are in that first 25% phase-in. So there are a couple items or a couple questions that this legislation has created. One is, does it work? Does co-rec really work? And two, where's my institution? So let's jump right into that. As we're waiting for statewide numbers to come in, we looked at our grantees that have been doing co-rec for a little while now, not just overall, but just people who've been doing it for a while. And what you'll see from this chart is for the traditional model, for integrated reading and writing, for the traditional models between 32 and 39%, and for math, it was 17% would complete that first college level course in 1 year. But under co-rec, the new model, 62% would finish in 1 semester, and 70% for math in 1 semester. So you'll see that, at least from early indications, that it is something that's going to be working, which is why the legislation was put in place. So with that, the next question is, how did my institution do? Are we actually on target to get to that 25%, 50%, and so forth? So what we have found is, so far, up to through fall 2018, 76% of institutions have met the math requirement, and 93% have met the integrated reading and writing requirement. So we're on target to hit our goals. Obviously, we have to do it through spring and through summer, but the institutions have worked very hard to actually implement House Bill 2223. Dr. Morales-Vale, who's in the audience to answer any questions, worked very hard to provide training. Dr. Keelan Morgan has been working hard with technical assistance as far as institutions and how to actually implement this on their campuses for those who hadn't done it at this large of a clip. What we're planning on doing long term is, this is self-reported data, but we'll actually verify this through the spring, April 2019, through our certified CBM data. Now, we're putting students, let's say you have a scale of 1 to 6, and students that score between a 5 and a 6 go through this co-rec process. But what about all those students who are lower than that? What are we doing with those students? And we're putting a state recommendation in our plan that's asking for us to provide AL services. So it's kind of it's similar to co-rec, but you're going to take math, but it's math for your job that you're trying to get, for the certification you want. It just won't be Algebra 2, it'll be particularly for your work in your area. So it's contextualized for that particular industry that those lower skilled students may be seeking. So we want to make sure if they're not on the higher level of developmental ed, then at least the lower levels are actually getting this sort of service and contextualized learning. Earlier I mentioned the college prep course. There are a number of students in high school who may not have shown college readiness by the time they become seniors. The legislators felt that there should be some college prep course that will allow students to show college readiness before they graduate. This course is designed in conjunction with higher ed and a K-12, where they meet to talk about how a partnership to offer these courses. And our recommendation you see there for the college prep course, which I'll talk a little bit more on what we've seen, is to enhance the courses and for us to have a bigger role in these prep courses and not necessarily make them uniform, but definitely uniform to the extent that they should possibly require to take the TSI while they're taking this course. Right now, sometimes it's just successful passage could be getting a grade of a C, or it could be passing the TSI, it could be anything that the local partnership determines. So we want to actually take a bigger role in examining these courses and making sure it's fitting our needs. Because what we found is For those who actually take the college prep course and use it as an exemption, 52% are passing the math, 65 the reading, and 72% are passing the writing intensive, which we think are good numbers compared to traditional Dev Ed. But if you also notice from the report, those numbers are very small. We're talking less than 2,000 students are showing that they are counting this as an exemption. So if we can improve the course, we might get more going through the course and then get better results at the end for students showing college readiness before they actually graduate from high school. Overall, from the report and our findings thus far, we have about 4 recommendations. I talked about a couple of them earlier in the PowerPoint. Obviously, we think co-requisite is the way to go, so we want to continue to offer co-requisite instruction. The second one is when we talked about adult education for those who are lower on the spectrum as far as underskilled. The third is improving the college prep course, which I mentioned. And the last is we haven't mentioned, but looking at students who are showing college ready but still struggling when they get to college. The services for developmental students are only for paying for the developmental students. But what we want to do is if you're struggling, we want to be able to offer services for you, not just because you passed an exam and show college readiness, you may still be having other challenges, and we want to make sure that those students are also met. So finding a way to offer those support services to those students who actually also showed college readiness is something we're putting as a recommendation. That way we're serving all students who are in need, not just the ones who didn't show college readiness. And it's something Commission has always said, just because you turn a certain age, it doesn't make you all of a sudden an adult. You have a lot to learn and improve upon, and we're hoping we better serve these students at these institutions. So that's a lot, but we're doing a lot. We could have added more, but we'll stop with that.
Okay, thank you. Chairman?
Okay, so Darrell, give me a soundbite. What is the essence? Why does co-requisite, or mainstreaming developmental ed work at such a dramatic level?
I'll give you my quick soundbite, and I'll ask Dr. Morales-Vale to come up so she can speak on the mic to you all. But the biggest thing for me is I think that we get in the habit of doing things a certain way. And if you some people have been out of college for a while, or out of high school for a while, or out of college, they just don't recall certain things. And if you give them the course and the college course, and at the same time, and I love when David says this, they're taking some sort of support that's explaining to them or reminding them about fractions or reminding them about something they haven't seen in a long time, or they just heard it in class and then they walk into the support class and they say, oh, this actually matters what I'm learning. I think we're seeing that sort of attachment to the support and the need for the class is what is the greatest growth. I think that's what we're seeing.
As opposed to just purely developmental ed. But that would be the other model, right? You just developmental ed until you reach certain, ability.
I'll let Suzanne say, but the traditional model is you take a developmental class, hopefully you pass it, and then the next semester or the next year, you're taking the college course. And it's a disconnect. They're spending money for things that aren't necessarily counting towards their credential. And the stigma of it in some instances that you're in college, but you're not really taking college courses.
Could I add my personal take, and Dr. Morales-Vale has heard this before, but when this was presented as a model a number of years ago, started in Baltimore, or at least the most famous, I was struck by, developmental ed and that course they eventually take for the degree or certificate is separated. And when it becomes co-requisite, suddenly what they're being done in what had been the developmental ed part, the student sees immediately, I actually need it for this course. It's not just something somebody's making me do, but it's in one of the models, I've just come from the class, I know I need to know how to do this, and it makes a greater connection between what they need help on and what they're actually able to do, and there are different ways of approaching that, but I think, to me, that's the most critical element.
Absolutely in agreement with both comments. I think the magic is that just-in-time support. So when the student is struggling in the college credit course and then they meet either right after that course time or maybe on a Friday in a specialized one-on-one or small group tutoring session, when they have that question answered right then and there and they're able to work through it, then they can go to class next time to the college credit course and they're not falling behind, they don't have residual questions, and they're able to move forward and continue their momentum and their progress. Also, it's a matter of attrition. So 2/3 of students who actually successfully complete developmental education in a traditional, what we call a prerequisite model, they disappear. They don't move on. Life happens. A lot of times they run out of money. Many of these students are, financially in a circumstance where, they're barely able to continue on. And so when they have the college credit class and the required and the necessary support that's provided at the same time, they're able to build on that momentum, and they can see they finished the college credit course. Now I'm able to move into my next required course or set of courses, and that momentum is very, very important.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I think the soundbite might be that we've turned a corner in developmental ed. I think we've been struggling ever since I've been here with trying to come up with more effective models of developmental ed. I've been advocating for years that we need to integrate reading and writing into one course instead of doing them separately, and that seems to be working. The co-requisite model, I mean, it's the oldest example of how you help students succeed, and that is more time on task. If you haven't learned something, you're going to have to spend more time understanding the concept that's being taught in the class. These are very promising early data, and I think if we continue to see improvement, we will have built a very, very important mechanism to help us achieve the goals of 60 by 30 Texas.
Okay. Michelle?
Hi, can you clarify for me, these co-requisite classes, is it how many credit hours? Is it in alignment with the actual course that they are required to take? And also, is there financial aid that goes along with this, or is it shouldered by the student?
So to answer the second question first, any developmental course or intervention is eligible for federal financial aid. So students are, they do have access to those resources, either Pell Grants, student loans, or work study, whatever it is for federal financial aid can be applied. In terms of what the actual intervention looks like, I think one thing that I hear over and over from a lot of my colleagues across the country that are implementing co-requisites is Texas has a very unique model, and that each institution is able to use what we call the non-course competency-based, the NCBO model, to specifically design interventions that meet the needs of the students at that institution. So in terms of credit hour equivalency, you can have a 1 credit hour model where students are required to meet every Friday and have either one-on-one or small group interventions. It could be a 2 credit hour where they meet a little bit more. It could be the model that Dr. Gardner referenced, the one from Baltimore County. The accelerated learning program is a 3 credit hour. So for every hour the student spends in the college credit course, they meet usually immediately after and spend an additional 45 to 50 minutes in a sort of a recitation fashion. They go over what was covered during that college credit time. Any residual questions are addressed, more time on task, more time for practice and feedback, so that students really gain that understanding before they move forward to that next class. And there are other ways that are delivered as well through more short-term boot camp types of models. The minimum number of hours, literal hours, is 4 hours, all the way up to over 48 hours. So there's a lot of flexibility, and the feedback that we receive from institutions is that's the one key that they really love, is that they're able to design specific programs to meet the needs of their students.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Acosta, second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Morales-Vail, and thank you, Jarrell, on that. Next, we move on to Agenda Item 5G, is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the approval to increase funding for grad techs activities designed to help meet the completion goal of 60 by 30 techs. Jarrell?
Thank you. This should be brief. Last year, last spring, we requested funds to support our Grad Texas initiative. As a reminder, Grad Texas initiative is our efforts to address stop-outs and get them to return to receive some sort of credential. We've begun to kind of increase our efforts to address stop-outs and take a state focus on this effort. We felt before we just kind of had grants that went to institutions, and it was not organized in the manner to which we think could have the biggest impact, the greatest impact for this population. So we are now establishing a consortium of institutions to help share best practices, to share technology, to share in outreach, and more importantly, share possibly in applying for outside grants or providing for private grants of that sort. Many of you already know we also have an agency, a legislative appropriations request to help support this initiative. So this request is an increase in the request that we had this spring. So as funds come in, as we have additional funds this year, we can actually spend those funds on this consortium and on the practice to help identify stop-outs. And my favorite slide, it's my best PowerPoint ever, one slide. It just kind of drives home what that means for stop-outs here for the state. This is just one cohort there for, I think it's FY 2016. That's about almost 11,000 students that have stopped out who haven't shown back up, and that's the cost of the state for those students who have not come back that we've already put in and invested in those sort of students. So. We do think we can get some students back who may already have hours to get a certificate or credential that they don't even know about. We'll look to identify them, and then we'll also look to identify with our consortium members students around the state who could come back and actually get a credential or reverse transfer in some of those instances. So we look for favorable consideration for that request.
Okay. Any
Chairman,
questions?
I move for approval.
Okay. First of all, any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Ms. Acosta, second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
We move on now to Agenda Item 5H, which was on the consent calendar. Agenda Item 5I is a report to the committee on school closures and/or teach-outs pursuant to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.75. There's no action required. Rex?
Thank you. So in your blue pages, you will see a number of institutions listed there for closure, most of which have been doing what they are supposed to be doing. However, since this blue page was created, things have changed somewhat, and that is the Education Corporation of America has closed its doors, or is in the process of closing its doors, I should say. And in the state of Texas, that affects 16 institutions with approximately 3,600 students enrolled. So and what happened to them was they had, and you'll see that some of their institutions are already listed here on the blue pages, and we have known for some time that they were going to phase those out and close them, and they were in the process of doing the teach-out. They were also had intended to sell some of their other campuses, and they had asked for receivership, which kept them in business. But what happened to them last Friday was that their accreditor then refused to continue their accreditation. And once that happened, the flow of federal dollars, of federal financial aid, ceases at that moment. And so that left them without the financial ability to continue on. Now, the only silver lining in this is that given the timing of this, it has, and they have tried to do this, and I think by and large they have succeeded in allowing students to finish at least a current semester, so that students didn't get cut off in the middle of the semester or toward the end. They've been allowed to finish this semester. We have also obtained already the transcripts from these institutions, and we've also obtained what's called the general ledger card, loan forgiveness, or seeking further financial aid, that kind of thing.
I just, if I might add that because the boards and the commissioners increased emphasis on wanting to monitor for-profit institutions, even before this was announced, Rex's staff had reached out the week before to ask for transcripts without knowing they were going to be closed the following week. And so I think this is not good for students, but because you've understood the problem for students in the creation of the repository, the staff was able to get at least a little bit ahead of the game to help the students. So I just wanted to let you know there was some help from your direction.
Okay. Thank you for that update and report. Agenda item 5J is discussion of the 2018 report on the National Research University Fund. This is for informational item only. Rex?
So this is actually a little bit of a precursor to asking for your indulgence in January to allow the commissioner to submit the report on what's generally referred to as NRUF as soon as we get it finished. So the basic idea behind NRUF is to provide research dollars to universities. 8 of our emerging research institutions are eligible to become eligible for NRUF funds. 3 of them currently are. Previously, Texas Tech University and University of Houston achieved eligibility for NRUF funding in 2012, and in this past year, the University of Texas at Dallas has achieved eligibility for NRUF funding, and all 3 of them have received approximately $7 to $9 million over the years per year for conducting research at their institutions. So what I have in front of you is a couple of slides to just remind you about eligibility requirements and what this is all about. And so as you can see, there are benchmarks for them to become eligible for the funds. They must first of all be designated as an emerging research university. And as I said, we have 8 of those have been designated. They're listed in your blue pages. And they must have restricted research expenditures of at least $45 million per year. And they need to be able to do these things 2 years in a row. And then they must comply with 4 of the following: have a $4 million endowment, award 200 PhD degrees annually, have a freshman class with high academic achievement, membership in things like the Association of Research Libraries, Phi Theta Capital, or equivalent national recognition, high-quality faculty, and a commitment to high-quality graduate education based on a review of doctoral programs. So they have, as I said, after they reach those benchmarks for 2 years in a row, then they also must pass an audit that is conducted by the state auditor of the information they've submitted, of the awards they've submitted, and so forth, to verify all of the information that in effect we have been asked to verify. So there's a double check in effect on the institutions themselves. And this is and as you can see, there's a little breakdown on the amounts of money that they have received over the years. Regarding those eligibility criteria, I'll point out that the last 2, and I'll back up on this, the last 2 about a commitment, high-quality faculty and a commitment to high-quality graduate education has never been used by an institution so far. But we have had inquiries about what that might look like, and so staff has been working on this over the past few months, and we've developed criteria for this about what high-quality faculty would look like in a commitment to a high-quality graduate education as based on a review of their doctoral programs. And what we have come to is that we would have other institutions who are in Tier 1 and R1 status essentially conduct a desk review and a site review of those programs or those faculty to verify that their faculty really are high quality and that the programs are high quality.
And that's faculty from other states.
Yes, and just as we do with other doctoral programs, that would be faculty from outside of the state of Texas that would be reviewing them.
Well, why would there not be a requirement to do all 6?
This is by statute.
Okay.
The do 4.
Yeah. This is the option, really, if you can't fulfill the other, and that's why it hasn't been used thus far. The schools that have been designated at this point have been able to use the existing criteria.
Okay.
At some level, this is particularly challenging, but it was added as when they were first developed as sort of an out if you couldn't meet some certain standards, say with academy members or things like that.
Okay. Chairman Stedman?
So there's TRIP, there's TRUF, there's one other, and then, but this is national research, but this is Texas, right? It has nothing to do with national, just Texas. But there was already a TRUF, so they couldn't use that. the kind of thing. Okay, could you go to the second slide?
It was to create nationally competitive programs, that they would be in the same class as AAU institutions.
Okay. Well, the other thing, so there's an endowment, earnings from the endowment. I thought as institutions enrolled, it would simply, I mean, in other words, qualified, not enrolled, but qualified for this NRUF funding, that the funding for the existing qualifiers would go down, but that's not what's shown here. So
They held the other, they divided it by 9 and just kept those on the shelf.
oh, I see. So and that just increases the endowment by reinvesting. I got you. Okay. Well, that's fair. So then, well, I guess it's fair. Unless you're Houston or Tech, but anyway, but it does build the endowment faster over time. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And then like a lot of endowed funds, then there's a certain percentage that's designated to be withdrawn each year for the payment.
Okay, thank you, Rex. Agenda items 5K, 5L, 5M, 5N, 5O, and 5P were all on the consent calendar. Agenda item 6 is adjournment. If there's no further discussion, do I have a motion for adjournment? Moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Costa. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all very much and have a great afternoon.
Okay, I have an announcement. Let's see, we will be unable to hold the board retreat this afternoon since we have unexpectedly lost a quorum of the board. So, and then there's this question of lunch, right? There was like a Chinese wall that we couldn't all be in the same room if we weren't meeting or something, and then so 2 of us would have to go over there and 2